What's up guys, and welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to be doing a hashtag called Real Tarot Readers, or essentially the questions are related to, are you a real tarot reader? Real, by the way, is being used loosely, at least in my video. I can't say for anybody else, but I'm going off of the prompts on Amethyst Ascension's video because that's how I ran into it. I will tag her video in the description down below. And then as I'm talking, I'm just going to show you my tarot deck, the Iris Tarot, which, by the way, I still have decks available on my website, which is always linked in the description under my link tree. And I don't have any listed on my Etsy anymore because once they sold out there, I wasn't going to post anymore since Etsy charges extra fees and things like that. However, if anybody who's international really wants a copy of the deck, I am willing to do a custom listing of my deck on Etsy for you, but be forewarned, it is going to be more expensive on Etsy if you purchase it through Etsy. I'm just going to go through the cards as I talk, just so you guys have something to look at. So the first question is, do you have to know all of the book's meanings to be a tarot reader? If so, what book meanings? Now, this is obviously all my opinion in the video. I don't believe that you have to know all of the book meanings to be considered a tarot reader. I believe that the tarot can also be heavily read intuitively. Like if somebody picked up a deck of cards and they noticed, oh, this feels like a system, but they don't know anything about tarot, just looking at the drawing, especially the Rider-Waite, right, the OG, or one of the OGs, I guess, especially just looking at the drawings, like you're able to see what's going on, feel what's going on. Again, this is going off of being an intuitive reader. And that's reading it intuitively. That's not going off of what the book says. So I would say no, you don't have to know all of the book meanings to be considered a tarot reader. I will add that it does help to know the general meanings of each tarot card, but it's not like a deal breaker, if that makes sense. Like that's not gonna make you a tarot reader to know the book of tarot. Does that make sense? Question number 2 is, can you be an intuitive who uses the tarot cards and be considered a tarot reader? Yes, I think I pretty much already mentioned some of this on the first question. So I believe you can intuitively read the tarot. You can intuitively read anything. It doesn't have to be a tarot deck. So you can intuitively read the tarot. Just because you don't intuitively read it also doesn't mean that you're not a real tarot reader. Does that make sense? You don't have to intuitively read the tarot either to be a real tarot reader. Question number 3 is, do you have to be reading for others to be a real tarot reader? Like, do you have to read for others to be considered a real tarot reader? I would say no. There are many people who don't read for anybody but themselves. There are many people who don't read for anybody but maybe spirits, for example. Or there's also many people who don't read themselves at all and just read for other people. But just because you read to certain people or yourself or certain beings, whatever you want to call spirits and things like that, that doesn't mean you're not a real tarot reader. Real tarot reader, you know, you're still a reader. You're still reading things, you're still reading people, you're still feeling emotions, you're still sensing energy and things like that. Question number 4 is, do you have to be a professional reader to be considered a real tarot reader? I would say no. Now I'm assuming by professional tarot reader means like maybe somebody who charges for their services, or they have like some fancy degree or some paper that says I'm a real tarot reader. No, you don't need that to be considered a reader of the tarot. Now I can argue that, okay, you might need that piece of paper for certain things, like to be a doctor and stuff like that, but Even then, I would have to make sure this doctor had good grades in school, because nowadays it seems like D's get degrees, if that makes sense. That's what my buddy said, who recently graduated college. He's like, yeah, D's get degrees. I'm like, oh, that's terrible. Can you imagine a doctor who got all D's? D as in Delta, not B as in Bravo. Who got all D's in college, and you find out that they're operating on you? I would not want to be operated by that doctor. No, thank you. But like things like that, okay, it makes sense. But for tarot, I can argue no. You don't have to be a professional reader to be considered a tarot reader. And the other thing too, professional reader, like that can be seen and dissected in different ways. Like, okay, well, what does being a professional reader actually mean to a lot of people? To me, when I hear professional reader, I'm hearing somebody who has their own business, somebody who's studied the tarot extensively, like they know the ins and outs of tarot, or they would know the book meanings, they would know intuitive meanings, like they would just know the whole shebang, you know what I mean? And they're just comfortable that much with reading. It just kind of flows as they read. I think I kind of mixed question 4 and question 5. Question 5 is, do you need to have a certification? Did I say that weird? Do you need to have a yeah, I did say it weird. Do you need to have a certification? I said certification. Do you need to have a certification to be, I still said it weird. Oh my God. Do you need to have a certification to be a real tarot reader? If so, who determines if you are certified? Now this one was interesting when Amethyst Ascension went through it, because before I heard the second part to that question, even I was like, well then who determines, who of all people from the very beginning determines that they can play the role of certifying anybody? You know what I mean? Like, who are you, Mr. Number One person who started certifying people, to say that your word is above all, to say that this person is certified and legit, things like that. You know what I mean? So that is a big no for me. You do not need a fancy paper saying I'm a certified tarot reader to be considered a tarot reader. And it kind of sucks that a lot of people give into those gimmicks too, those like programs and things like that. Like, join us, get certified, be a certified tarot reader. That doesn't mean shit in my eyes. It can mean shit to other people's eyes, but again, to me, no. You don't need a paper saying I'm a certified tarot reader to be seen as a reader. Question number 6 is, do you need to know the Golden Dawn symbolism or astrology or Kabbalistic tree to be a real tarot reader? I'm gonna say no from personal experience, because I don't know what 2 of those things are. And I read tarot like no one's business, you know? Like, I read tarot differently. I read how I read. And I don't know nothing about no Golden Dawn symbolism or Kabbalistic tree and things like that. I know of astrology, but like, I don't know all that extra stuff. I don't even know what that is. I just don't know what it is. And this is me saying, like, I'm more of an intuitive reader. I'm very visual. I'm very, I guess, imaginative. Like, I have a high imagination. So I'm a very visual person. I picture things so clearly in my mind. I have an inner monologue, which is very surprising that a lot of people don't. I find that really strange. If you guys don't know what inner monologue means, it's your inner voice. Like, for example, if you're reading in your head, hearing yourself reading in your head, that's your inner monologue. That's you talking. If somebody says, picture an apple, you see an apple in your head, that's your inner monologue. That's your inner thoughts, your third eye. And a lot of people apparently don't have that. They can't do that for some weird reason. I'm just curious, do any of you guys not have inner monologue? Just curious. I do, so I'm very imaginative, and that's one of the things for people who do have inner monologue, is they're very good at picturing things. They're very creative and things like that. I'm straying off, I'm sorry, I'm rambling. But I would say no, you don't need to know all those other things to be a real tarot reader. Some people, I guess, might be old school, would argue, yeah, you need to know everything for them to consider you a tarot reader. But again, this is all about you. Do you feel that you need to know all of that stuff to be a real tarot reader? You can read without knowing all of that. You can read without using the tarot, honestly. This is just a physical tool. You're the conduit. You're the one who's receiving and giving the message. This is just visual, which helps other people to kind of understand or remember the message that you're portraying. That's another reason why I'm like, yeah, you don't need all that to be a reader. Question number 7 is, do you have to know the history of tarot to be a real tarot reader? If so, what history? I would say no. You don't need to know the history of tarot. I don't know the history of tarot. What are we in school? Are we going to take a test? Are we supposed to pass? Is this to get certified? You know? So no, you don't need to know the history of tarot to be considered a tarot reader, or a real tarot reader, I should say. It's kind of like, it's to each their own. But me, myself, and I would say no, you don't need to know the history of it. It's interesting to know history of certain things. I personally like Egyptian history. Like, that's something that intrigues me. That's something that I want to know about. Does knowing about Egyptian history do anything to benefit my life? Maybe, I'm not sure. Does it bring in any income or benefit my life financially? No. But like, it's something that I want to know that's related in history. And then for tarot, it's something that may benefit you to know of it. Like, it's interesting to know where it started and how far it's gone, but it's not something that you need to know to read. You know what I mean? Question number 8 is, does having a smaller or larger collection determine if you are a better, a worse, or a real tarot reader? No. Hell nah. You can have, like I said earlier, you can have no decks and still be a reader. But I mean, we're talking about tarot, so you don't need to have a bajillion decks. Having one deck helps because, you know, you're trying to read tarot. In order to be considered a tarot reader, you need to have a tarot deck for somebody to know that you read tarot. Actually, that's an interesting question. Do you need to own a tarot deck at all to be considered a tarot reader? Or should I say a real tarot reader? Because then how would you know to read the tarot if you don't even own a tarot deck? I'm saying, I would say at least owning one, because then what are you reading? You're reading energy, right? It's not, you're not reading tarot at that time because you're not using a deck. But do you really need a deck to read the tarot? It's interesting to think about. I would say it helps because the tarot has its own system. It kind of helps you stay on track in a way. But I think at minimum, at least have one deck, one tarot deck. Otherwise, you would just be reading. You would just be reading energy in general. But so for this question, I would say you don't need to have a large collection. You don't need to have 10 decks. You don't need to have 100 decks. I would say you do need to have at least one deck to be considered a tarot reader, because that shows people, that physically shows people, oh, they have a tarot deck. They're a tarot reader. If you don't have any tarot decks, and let's say somebody comes over and you tell them, oh, I'm a tarot reader. You don't have any tarot decks whatsoever. They're gonna be like, all right, where are your decks? And then you tell them, oh, I don't have any. Well, then how are you a tarot reader? That's a good question. Please answer it. I'm curious. No, but for real, at least have one deck. But you don't have to have more than one deck, is what I'm trying to say too. Question number 9. Do you have to read reversals to be considered a real tarot reader? Nope, you do not. You read how you read, how it makes you comfortable. I'm pretty sure there are a lot of great tarot readers that don't read reversals. And then a lot of tarot readers can also argue you don't necessarily need to read a reversed card from the deck, because the deck already, with all of them right side up, have sort of a balance of energies between both of them. And also depending on how, for example, if you're doing a spread, depending on how the cards are laid out or where they're positioned in your spread, can determine like what energy source are you more leaning towards for the reading? Is it more towards an imbalanced energy or a balanced energy, like a negative or a positive, you know what I mean? Yin and yang, things like that. So for example, the Sun card, I don't have the Sun card on me, do I? I think I already showed that one. But just picture the Sun card. It's a very happy card, right? Now, how would you read that negatively? Saying that way, it sounds negative to say it that way. How would the Sun card give you bad news? Does that make sense? So those who don't read reversals in a sense of like, oh, if it's upside down, it means this. If it's right side up, it means this. Usually with the Sun right side up, it means more positive things, yes. But like I said, it depends on where the card falls in your reading, specifically if you're doing a spread. But for me, it also depends what I'm feeling, what I'm hearing, what I'm seeing. And I'm talking about like my clairs. So I feel like it varies, but you don't need reversals to be considered a tarot reader. You can use them, right? And just because you use them also doesn't mean you're not a tarot reader because you use them, you know? So it's kind of like to each their own. Everybody reads differently. There's no, I would say, wrong way to read the tarot. I would like to see somebody argue as to what a wrong way to read tarot would be, because I'm just curious, what would a wrong way to read tarot be exactly? And why do you feel that is? It's more of a personal thought for somebody to think that way. Because again, it's to each their own. Everybody reads differently. Everybody feels energy differently. It's very personal to each person. All right, we're in question number 10. Do you have to use certain techniques or customs to be considered a real tarot reader? For example, if you were gifted your first deck, if you shuffle a certain way, or you use spreads or no spreads? I would say no. Can you imagine? Can you imagine if all of us waited for someone to gift us our first deck? Can you imagine? When would anybody ever come to think, oh, I should just buy a tarot deck for my friend? That just doesn't make any sense. Like, girl, go buy your own deck. The heck? But yeah, I don't think you need to have certain customs or use certain techniques to be considered a real tarot reader. It's fun. Spreads can be fun, right? Certain techniques can be fun, but it's not something you need to read that rhymes, and it rhymed on purpose. Question number 11. Do you need to read a certain way to be considered a real tarot reader? For example, do you need to be psychic? Do you need to read with divine communication? Do you need to have a higher self connection, or a connection with your higher self? I don't understand this part of the question. Psychological or even predictive reader? A psychological reader. I'm not sure what that part of the question means. But essentially it's saying, do you have to read a certain way? Or I guess have certain abilities, or certain knowledge. I'm assuming that's what the psychological part means, to be considered a real tarot reader. Nope. You don't need any of that. Like I said, it's very personal for each and every person on how they choose to read the tarot. One thing I will say though, I don't like when people are boasting, I'm like 100% guaranteed psychic, 1,000 years experience. Obviously I'm over exaggerating here. I have 1,000 years experience tarot reader. You should get my reading, instead of the person who has like 1 month experience, you know? First of all, I don't give a fuck if you have 1 month's experience or 10 years experience. For all you know, the person who has the 1 month experience ends up actually being a way better reader for a person than you who has 10 years experience for that same person giving them a reading. It's all very personal. It's all very unique. It's that connection that the reader has with whom they're reading for. And also, it also can be at that very moment, based on the reading that they're doing, or based on the energy that's surrounding them during that reading. Does that make sense? It can be argued in many ways, but again, these are my 2 cents regarding being a real tarot reader. Question number 12 is, can you refer to your guidebook and still be considered a real tarot reader? Of course. That's what a guidebook is for. It's to help guide. It's like studying. You never stop learning. At least I hope you don't stop learning, because that's something that's kind of a lifetime experience till death. Even in death, actually, in the afterlife, you still keep learning and growing. Question number 13 is, reading with playing cards, Lenormand Oracle cards, Kipper, or any other cards besides tarot, still considered a real tarot reader? Well, that one I would say no, because they're not tarot cards. So if we're talking about the tarot system, then no, because those aren't tarot cards. Those are other cards. But if you're not talking about the tarot system and you're just talking about reading in general, then yeah, you're still a reader if you're using all of that. Heck, you can use just Pokemon cards and read for someone. The tarot is just its own little system. Speaking in like a common sense kind of way, I would say no to that, because none of those cards are tarot decks. They're not tarot cards. It's the only reason why that question would be a no, because it's not a tarot deck. It's kind of like what I said earlier, which isn't a question in this prompt, but I'm adding it if I can, is, are you a tarot reader if you own a tarot deck at all? Like if your friend comes over and you've been telling them you're a tarot reader, but you actually have 0 decks whatsoever, are you a tarot reader? You don't own a tarot deck, so how are you reading tarot? At that point, you're just a reader, which isn't a bad thing, but you can't really say you're a tarot reader because you don't own a tarot deck. You're just a reader at that point. Does that make sense? So I'm kind of like, I guess, connecting that question I kind of threw in towards question number 13, just to put it more in like a direct response, because none of those decks are a tarot deck. And then the last question we have, what denotes a real tarot reader to you? So for me, a real tarot reader is not somebody who's just in it to take your money and to say whatever it is that you want to hear. It's not somebody who's purposely trying to scam people because they know that a lot of people are desperate for answers. There's a lot of people who are in vulnerable states and they go searching for answers or for guidance, and there's predatory people who claim to be tarot readers that are not, who would take advantage of people like that. If you were honestly a real tarot reader, or a reader in general, then you'd understand the importance of being honest, of being truthful, of not doing anything that hurts others or yourself, let alone purposefully, you know what I mean? It's like you would know better, or you should know better. I hope that makes sense. But it's, if you're predatory, like if there's any predatory thoughts that come to mind at all when it comes to reading the tarot, then that to me says you're not a real tarot reader. And unfortunately, there's quite a few people out there who are predatory readers, which sucks because they give us real tarot readers a bad name, you know what I mean? Or like they say like, oh, we're Satanists, or we worship the devil, or tarot is evil, things like that. Like, it's not. It really isn't. And to be honest, it's just paper. It's a tool, yeah, but it's just paper. Like I said, you don't technically need this to read. It's a tool, a visual tool, because it also helps who you're reading for, even if that's just you. It just helps make the connection because you're visually seeing it. Like visually, I mean physically seeing it. I can visually see it in my mind, right? Again, not other people can because they don't have inner monologue. But like this is just a physical tool to help with delivering your message. It's not something you need to deliver your message, but it's there. But yeah, that's those are my 2 cents for the hashtag Real Tarot Readers. If anything triggered you, oh well. Again, this is just me giving my opinion. It's not me being wrong. It's not me being right. It's just me being me. It's just me giving my 2 cents and my thoughts on these questions. And like I said before, everybody reads differently. Everybody is unique in how they do things, how they choose to do things, and the things that they don't do, you know? So you do you, boo. That's all I have to say. But this was a fun tag. I feel like I haven't done a tag in months. I'm wondering which one I should do next. I have a list of hashtags, by the way, that I've been needing to film or try to film. But this one, it just caught my eye, and I just felt like I really wanted to just give my 2 cents. And also just to have a chatty video, you know, because I feel like it's been a while, even though it's just my hands and not all of me just talking. But that's cool. So that is it for this video. Again, I will link Amethyst Ascension's video in the description down below. If you stuck to this part of the video, leave the rainbow emoji in the comments. I'd very much appreciate it. Don't forget to like the video, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.